For those of you that aren't aware, Commissioner Hansberger is under the weather this evening, so I'll be conducting the meeting. So let's see, Commissioner Secretary, can you take roll call?
Sure. Chair June Hansberger is out. Vice Chair Patricia Trouth.
Here.
Chris Duncan.
Here.
James Gross is out. Glenn Johnson.
Present.
David Thiele.
Here.
And Jim Wong.
Here.
Okay, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next up are the approval of the minutes. Can I have someone make a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimously approved. Okay, oral communications, oral comments will be heard from people who submit a white speaker slip to the Commission Secretary. Commission Secretary, do we have any white slips this evening?
We do not yet. On an agenda item? Great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go right into special presentations, proclamations, and announcements. And let's see, the first up was the county sheriff's report, which we will, what do we do, just postpone that? Oh. Oh, okay.
Okay, I can share that 1 second. And my name's Ian Barr. I'm one of the traffic engineers here with the city. Abe was unable to make it today, so I'm gonna head this one. So let me go ahead and pull that up. Okay, I can probably spend a little bit of time on each one to let everyone review it. So monthly citations, monthly collisions through October, the number of DUIs each month, and then a map that shows the different accident types and the counts.
It's good, that's a new format, seeing it per month that way, so, no, it's great, nice new presentation of it. It's good to see it this way, to see how it trends.
Do I have additional comments from commissioners? Okay, thank you. We'll move into the action items. So the first item is AB 43, immediate effectiveness in residential streets policy. Can you give us a little overview on this?
Yeah. Hey, Amanda, do we have a speaker on the first action item?
This doesn't concern Quail Gardens.
No, this is AB 43. Okay. Yeah, a little background. So the state passed an assembly bill that allowed us to reduce speed limits on roads by an additional 5 miles per hour. And after working with council to finalize this map here, that shows all of the roads that we wanted to implement that 5 mile per hour reduction. We went ahead and installed the speed limits and changed out the speed legends, and that was completed, I want to say July or August. And so this agenda report here was to just kind of review and go over the effectiveness of those speed limit changes thus far. So we took about 8 or so roads where we did reduce the speed limit, and we just collected data on them. So this table here shows the different streets. We have Mountain Vista, La Costa, Lake Drive, Vulcan Avenue, Belore, Melba, and Capri. So that third column, and then the segment right here in that second column. And then we show the previous speed limit, and then we show that new revised 5 mile per hour reduction speed limit. And then that second to last column on the right shows the 85th percentile speed before we implemented the new speed limit reduction. And then that final column to the right, excuse me, to the right shows the final 85th percentile speed, the data that we recently collected within the past 1 to 2 months after those signs went in. So taking a look at the table, most of the segments, the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on that list, we actually saw a decrease in the 85th percentile speed. And then those last two, which are the 25 mile per hour roads that are now 20, we didn't really see too much change. So Melba, the 85th, stayed the same, and Capri, it looks like it went up 1 mile per hour. And this was no enforcement or anything. This was just us going out there, installing some devices and collecting some data. So overall, it appears to be pretty effective just from changing the speed limit signs and the legends and sending out notices to everyone. And I believe everyone was aware of what we did in the background and all that. So I think we provided a good notification system on that. So that was kind of part one of this, was to show you kind of over the last couple months since the speed limit signs have been installed, how effective has this been. So far, some positive numbers overall. The second topic was, I believe one of the council members wanted to have us take a look at how residential streets that weren't included in this 5 mile per hour reduction could be included and evaluated as well to get their streets lowered 5 miles per hour. So staff went ahead and we looked closely at the new assembly bill and the new the CVC section and the MUTCD, and we kind of created 2 simple criterias that we wanted to get your guys' feedback on to allow these residential streets to be evaluated for that reduction. So the criteria 1 for this would be the roadway would need to qualify as a residence district per the CBC code 515, which essentially states that every 1/4 of a mile on that street, you need to either have 13 homes with frontage on one side of the road or 16 homes with frontage total on both sides of the road. So that would qualify a street as a residence district. And the second requirement or criteria that we came up with was that the roadway would have to generate a high concentration of bikes and peds, where at least 5 of the items on our attachment 3 are present within a distance of 1,320 feet. So to give a little background before I dive into that table, for the roads to qualify for that 5 mile per hour reduction as part of this bill, they needed to either have been a safety corridor, which you take a look at the collision history in the city and the roadway segments that have the highest number of severe and fatal injuries would qualify as safety corridors. So that was maybe a third or so of our fast roads in the city. And then the second criteria to qualify for that 5 mile per hour reduction would be, it would need to be a road that generates high concentrations of pedestrians and bikes. So it's those two. It's essentially looking at collision history or looking to see if it's near a park or a school or a bus stop or something that generates a lot of pedestrians and schools of peds and bikes. And that table that I referenced is this one here that is in the MUTCD. So here it is. It's titled Requirements to Determine Land or Facility that Generates High Concentrations of Peds and Bikes. So the land use, if it's within 1,320 feet of employment centers, retail centers, parks, schools, senior centers, cultural areas, all of those transit factors, like if there's some bus stops along that segment, the presence of active transportation facilities like sidewalks, crosswalks, bike lanes, all of those, if it's near signalized intersections, some demographic factors, presence of vulnerable groups, including children, seniors, schools, senior centers, persons with disabilities, and then local data, safety analysis, road safety audit, or formalized planning document, such as a local road safety plan. So that would need to be identified in a document like that. But overall, going back to our criteria of how a residential street can go ahead and apply to be included in this 5 mile per hour reduction. Again, and it would need to qualify as a residence district. And then we said, looking at that table that I was just on, the roadway that the applicant is applying for, it would need to meet at least 5 of the generators listed in this table here. So it would, for example, would need to, it could be any 5. It could be by a senior center, a school, and a park, and then it can also have a sidewalk and a bike lane, and then that would technically meet. So that was kind of how we wanted to develop that that policy, and I think at this point we're looking for feedback from the commission on what your thoughts are on that, and then we can go from there.
Okay, I'd like to open it up for a discussion. Excuse me?
Do we have public comments first?
Okay. Are there any public comments?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now I'd like to open it up to the commissioners. Commissioner Wong?
Thank you, Chair. So, Ian, thank you for your report. However, I have to question your statement that the speed limit reduction has been highly effective, because I suspect there's a lot more roads that have been loaded to 20 miles an hour than there are shown here, and also at the higher speed limits. And I really don't see much reduction there, because 20 miles an hour, I can almost do that on my bike, and I still get past pretty easily. I understand it's pretty difficult for drivers to slow down to 20 because it seems a lot slower even than 25. And so I suspect that compliance at the 20 mile an hour speed limit is rather low. And I'm only saying that anecdotally because I don't have any speed measuring equipment, but I suspect it's not as effective as you say. It does sort of corroborate with your survey, even though it's only 7 streets, that the 2 streets with 20 mile an hour speed limits have not been reduced in speed on those 2 samples. So, I would like to see it more effective. And I know you've done everything you can with speed limit signs, but it really takes something more positive, like enforcement or something.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, I think you're probably going to see less of, just from this table, I think that the faster the speed is on the road, or the higher the speed limit, it appears to be, from the data we've collected, that the more effective it has been. You look at Mountain Vista and La Costa at 45 and 35. When those were lowered, the 85th was down at least 5 miles per hour on both of them. Residentials, you go from 25 to 20, you might not see as drastic as that type of dip in the 85th percentile speed. So I do get your concerns. But on a residential road, 28 miles per hour on Capri, it did go up, but it's still adequate, I guess. But I do know what you mean, that there could be things we could do to help reduce that even more. And obviously enforcement would be one of those. And this was all taken with no, we didn't request any enforcement on those roads since we've installed those speed limits. So ever since, we installed them, residents on these roads, they haven't seen that I know of, unless they've requested them, sheriffs enforcing, because we've kind of, unless, there's been unless we get like a request, we haven't actually put sheriffs out on some of these roads. So this was essentially just collecting data based off of speed legends and speed limit signs changing, and that's it. So overall, I think there was a good positive decrease, but like you said, it wasn't as apparent on the local residentials, and that's something we can look at. But this is also a small sample size.
Mainly what I'm concerned about is that the intent behind lowering the speed limits is to increase safety, and since speeds haven't actually decreased in either sample you have and my unscientific, observations, I don't think we've really increased safety as much as we'd like. So I don't know what to do about that, and the sheriff isn't here, but I think he'd be overloaded anyway trying to enforce speed limits on on the residential streets. But main point is I don't think it's been too effective so far. So thanks for everything you've done, though.
Do I have some more commissioners that want to comment?
I do.
Commissioner Thiele, please.
Thank you. Ian, thanks for that report. Are you going to take other samples aside from these streets here? For example, El Camino Real. I know that that's a heavy use corridor, and I was wondering if you had plans to sample that either on the north end or the south end or anywhere on that corridor.
Yeah, I think we can. I think we did target some of the roads that we had speed data collected within the past few years. I didn't see any from El Camino Real. So for this report, since we had a time constraint, we just targeted between 7 and 8 roads where we had data recently that probably mirrored the same cross sections and geometries. Because if we take El Camino data from 2010, let's say, it's changed so much that I don't know how effective that comparison would be. But we can definitely collect more data on some of the faster roads. We might not have a comparison data from a couple of years ago, but compared to the posted speed limit, we can collect data and see what that 85th is and see how effective it is.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Some additional comments?
Glenn Johnson here. I've observed that traffic in general is moving more slowly. I try to observe the speed limits everywhere, and there are places where I do find that I'm leading a parade, but it seems to be an orderly parade at least. Nobody is honking their horns or trying to pass me on the right or anything. So I think this is good. I don't drive enough, I guess, to drive all the streets in Encinitas, but Leucadia Boulevard, the downhill slope from Quail Gardens Drive goes slowly. Quail Gardens Drive itself is quite calm. Westlake and Requisa are for the most part calm. So I think it's working well.
Okay, and I just wanted to comment, I live close to Lake Drive, and I can see a significant change, so that's refreshing to see. So I think at this point, we want to give any additional feedback that we might have. Commissioner Thiele, you were asking for data for El Camino Real, correct?
Yes. Yeah, that would be great. I just find that, yeah, those 3 lanes really, people can generate some speed. And I know I requested from Abe, and this was when the signs were just going up with the change, if there was a way to have a portable sign that people could visually see as they were entering from either the north or the south, that you're entering the speed reduction in that space at the north end, Lucadia coming south, and then coming up to Crest from the freeway. Really, that I think that would be helpful. If that's a possibility. I think Abe said you don't have too many of those signs, but I think that would be helpful, at least in rush hour. That would be helpful.
Commissioner Thiele, if I could just make a comment. I think there are no longer 3 lanes on El Camino going southbound because they repaved it or resurfaced it and restriped it. So I think there are now only 2 lanes going south. But I understand what you're saying. It still looks like a fast road, like a freeway, and it is still, speed limit is still, I think, 50 or 55 down to Manchester, and then it goes down to 40. But I don't think cars really slow down to 40 by the college there. So that would be something to look at also. But I emphasize with what you're saying, that that's our fastest road probably, and it ought to be slowed down if we can.
Okay, Commissioner Wong, do we want to say anything more specific as far as recommendations? I know you were saying that, that the speed limit still needs to be reduced, and that perhaps we should be doing more than signage. So do we want to do anything more specific as far as recommendations?
Well, no, I wasn't saying the speed limit should still be further reduced. I think that the speed limits are fine, but the
Enforced.
compliance is not so high, especially on the 20 mile an hour speed limits. So I don't know what to do about that, because I know the sheriff is too busy for enforcement, but if we could do something about that, that would be the most effective way, I think.
More enforcement, okay.
Yes,
So that would be part of our recommendation.
correct.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And
have a
then do
comment.
you have comments on the actual policy for roads to apply to get their residential street on that 20 mile per hour list?
I did have a question on that. When you say that bikeways is one of the criteria, does that include Sharrows as well? Because I think that'd be an
If
even
it's-
more incentive for having a slower speed
I
limit.
mean, it's a
And-
bicycle facility. I don't know. I'd have to look at what they.
When you say bikeway presence, right? So does that include Sharrows?
I think that means any bicycle facility. So a bike lane, a protected bike lane, a sharrow.
Okay.
I can double check, but I think any bicycle infrastructure on that road, I think would qualify.
Okay. Because I think Sharrows is even more reason for reducing speed limit than a bike lane, because then you're right in the lane. So that's a comment maybe you can note.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Duncan, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, a couple questions.
Go ahead.
Ian, what is the average speed limit of the residential streets that you think would kind of take advantage of a new policy like this?
I don't know. It just depends. I mean, I think some of the faster residentials and some of the slower ones could technically qualify, because as long as they have the driveway requirements and as long as they are located within, at least according to our proposed policy, 5 of these items on this table, they could technically qualify. So average speed, I think it just kind of varies, but I think all different types of these residential roads are probably around these certain things that they might be able to qualify.
I guess where I was going with that then is just in noticing that Melba and Capri going from 25 to 20 didn't change it a bit, not knowing what the sample size and all that is, shows me that going from that 25 to 20 doesn't seem to do much. So not knowing how much this process costs, You know, from a submission from a resident to wanting it done, well, to the city having to do the analysis, blah, 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 right? Finally, to the step of putting in new signs. I'm sure it's not a huge expense, but, and not knowing how many people might submit requests, it might be worth it to have consideration of at some threshold, 25 maybe, that the reduction, there is no reduction below a certain amount. Just because right now, when we see these lowest amounts, no one's driving slower than 20. No one's driving slower than 25 on those streets now that are 20. So it's just something to think about in terms of administering this and the cost, and maybe there's some lower limit that you set. So when people submit and apply for this, it's like, all right, we're already at 20. We can't get down to 15. That would, you know, that would seem pointless to me based on this data. And 25 might even be a questionable reduction down to 20. But just something to think about. That's my only observation from the numbers here.
Yeah, the lowest we would go is 20. So if a road's already down to 20, I think we'd probably keep them there, so.
Yeah. So maybe even to look at 25 to see is it worth going down to 20? Maybe a little bit more research on some of those 20-mile-per-hour streets.
Yeah.
See if
And I
they-
think enforcement would be a huge help as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Commissioner Johnson here. It seems like Encinitas Boulevard and El Camino Real, the traffic is traveling faster than many other places, and perhaps we need those on some future report so that we can evaluate it. And perhaps we could ask the sheriff to step up enforcement on this a little bit, especially going into the holiday season.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments? Okay. Do we need to vote on this? Yeah, just a motion. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the recommendations that we've just made?
Sure. Motion to approve?
Second?
Okay,
I do have a question. Are our comments going to be attached to the approval or not? Okay, then I'm in favor then, yes.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then, let's see, the next resolution is the signing and striping plans. Let's see. For the annual resurfacing project. So, let's see, so the plans were part of the attachment. So I'd like to open it up for discussion. And if we could we just get a little overview from your perspective as well?
Yeah, so each year our CIP team does an annual resurfacing project where they identify roads in the city that need to be overlaid or slurry sealed. And our traffic team gets that list, and we kind of use this time to take a look at the roads that are going to get repaved and see if any of these roads could use some striping improvements, because this is a good time for us when a road's recently repaved. If we want to make striping improvements, now would be the time to do so. And then for this year, we took a look at the list. I think it was probably around 25 roads, a lot of residentials, but some of the major roads. And we identified Leucadia Boulevard, Mountain Vista, and Birmingham Drive as roads that we decided to kind of draft a new striping plan for. And so if you want, I can quickly, I'm sure everyone's reviewed the plans, but I can just quick summarize some of the changes for each one, if that's okay, just to kind of give everyone a brief overview. So this first one is Birmingham from San Elijo to the I-5. So right now it's just one lane in each direction. I think they're pretty wide lanes, probably 15-foot lanes because it's a 30-foot road. And we decided to design it so on the eastbound, the uphill direction, we provided a bike lane and a buffer with a narrowed travel lane. And then going westbound down the hill, we provide some sharrows and a little bit wider travel lane. I think we initially had, one of our initial concepts was having a a 5-foot bike lane and a 10-foot lane on each side in each direction. But having spoken to some bike groups and bikers around the city and just kind of using engineering judgment as well, a 5-foot bike lane next to a 10-foot lane is not very comfortable for bikes. Especially if if it's a very steep uphill too. I know bikers, if you're going uphill, you might tend to like swing a little bit, and with that 10-foot travel lane, it can get really tight. So we decided to prioritize the bike lane on the uphill with a buffer, so a 6-foot bike lane with a 2-foot buffer, and then the downhill where bikers could potentially go at a similar speed to vehicles going down that hill. We just called out for the shared lane markings with some signage. So that was kind of the thought process. So I'll look forward to everyone's comments on that one. And then very quickly, Leucadia and Mountain Vista, these next two roads. Leucadia Boulevard, very similar to what it is now. We just implemented some lane narrowing, and that extra space we gave to the bike lane and buffer. So a little bit wider buffer and a little bit more in that bike lane there. And that goes from Saxony Road all the way to, I believe it's Town Center Place, where that Walmart is. So pretty minor there. And then this is Mountain Vista from El Camino all the way to, I believe it was Gardendale. So a little bit of an intersection change here. We wanted to fit in a bike lane at the intersection, so we have 10-foot lanes going in that westbound direction with that 6-foot bike lane, and then that 10-foot right turn pocket. And then we did narrow the lanes going eastbound a little bit to fit that 6-foot bike lane. And then once you get past the intersection, you have 10-foot lanes and a wide bike lane and buffer on both sides. And that continues the whole stretch until you get to the end, which is Gardendale. So those are kind of a summary of those three segments and kind of what we're proposing. So we wanted to get the commission's thoughts on those.
I'd like to open it up for discussion.
Well, I'll say that I like everything you have, and I approve it. I think it's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think we're sending the right message to the community, when we spend the money to upgrade those crosswalks so they're nice and visible and distinct. So I think it looks good. Okay. Commissioner Thiele, please.
Thank you. Ian, this is excellent. Birmingham, just as an example, that's spot on for a cyclist, without question. I mean, a buffer is, one of the most important. And on that downhill, you can easily, I mean, it's fairly steep, but the speed you can get on a bike, definitely. As of now, I don't think I ride on Birmingham, maybe a block, but the way it's situated now, it's pretty dangerous. So I think this is a huge help. Mm-hmm. Thanks for that. And I would also say Mount Vista, a lot of kids are on that road, and so it's really important that we, I'm speaking of e-bikes mostly, but it's really important to give them a little bit of room, so that really makes sense. So thanks for doing that.
Okay, any other comments? Can I
I'll move
have
to
a
approve.
motion to approve? Oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Johnson here.
Yes.
I'll favor this, all of this. I do note that Leucadia Boulevard and Quail Gardens Drive, small houses that are being built over there in the, what's it called, the Fox Point area, are going to increase the traffic number of pedestrians and drivers, so that if there's a prioritization, I'd suggest that that one be the first one hit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure you heard me, but I move to approve this.
Okay. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and so let's see, then the third item, Cycle 11, Highway Safety Improvement Program. Ian, can you give us a little download on this one as well?
Yeah, for sure. Any comments? Amanda, do we have any speakers on this item? HSIP 11? Awesome, okay. So yeah, so what we do is we hired a consultant to evaluate our citywide collision data, and they take a look at areas where we have fatalities and severe collisions, and then they dig into the data on why they happened and the characteristics of each. You know, did they happen at night? Did they happen during the day? Who was involved? Was it a bike? Was it a pedestrian? And they group some of these together into projects to come up with a project that implements countermeasures to provide us with a good cost-benefit ratio to help alleviate some of those collisions that they saw. So in this case, this HSIP project we applied for was for pedestrian improvements at 3rd Street and B Street, and then a few streets along Parkdale Lane by the school, because the consultant found that there were some collision history apparent at these locations. So we packaged this up and do an HSIP application, and we ended up getting this awarded to us. So we hired this consultant to go ahead and draft some plans for us for concrete bulb outs, new ADA curb ramps, some street lights, and high visibility crosswalks. So I can also very quickly just go over the plans that they drafted for us. So this is the vicinity map. You got 3rd and B Street on the west, and then those 3 intersections along Parkdale Lane to the east. So I will go ahead and skip these civil sheets for now. It just goes over the overlay that we need when we install the bulb outs. So this is 3rd Street and B Street. As I'm sure most of you are aware, a few years back we installed some bulb outs on the north side of that intersection. This is very close to Moonlight Beach. So this project is proposing bulb outs on the south side. So then all corners of the intersection would get these bulb outs to provide traffic calming effect and reduce that crossing distance, while also providing those high visibility crosswalks. And then also we are proposing 2 street lights at this intersection as well, which I assume means that when the consultant evaluated the data here, there might have been 1 or 2 pedestrian related collisions that happened at night. And then they look at that, and then we go ahead and create projects like this that can help alleviate those, which would be installing street lights, bulb outs, and these high visibility crosswalks. Similar here in Parkdale Lane and Country Haven, proposing 4 new bulb outs at each of the corners, which provides that lane narrowing and traffic calming along with the high visibility crosswalks. Very similar to these 2 along Parkdale Lane as well. These are just to the east at Glen Arbor Drive, again 4 bulb outs. And at Willow Spring Drive to the east is just a cul-de-sac, but we wanted to install a couple bulb outs on that north side of the intersection, and then the school is just to the east of this, or sorry, just to the west on the left side of this image here. So these are improvements right near a school. And yeah, that's I think that's all I have. So open for any questions you guys have.
Like to open it up to the commissioners? Commissioner Wong?
Thank you, Chair. So Ian, thanks very much for this presentation. I think it will enhance pedestrian safety, especially the bulb outs. But I'm also wondering why you don't have any, at least in this report, any effort on daylighting. Because I live near Windsor, the intersection of Windsor and Moonvar, and it used to be that people would park around the corner irrespective of the intersection. But recently the city did paint the corners red, and so that has stopped people parking there. But just next street over, Moonvar and I forgot the name of Cross Street, they continue to park around the corner. And I think that's a fairly cheap way of enhancing safety, is just painting red curbs for daylighting. It's still illegal even if it's not painted red, but this lets them know, lets drivers know that they shouldn't park there. And it's a lot cheaper than bulb outs. So are there any plans for the city to paint more curbs red to alert drivers to daylighting?
Sorry, I'm not like the greatest with terminology. Can you clarify what you mean by daylighting?
Oh, sorry. So daylighting is a recent California ordinance or law saying that you can't park within 20 feet of an intersection. So the city of San Diego has done a lot of red curb painting near intersections to inform drivers about that. It's just painting red curbs within 20 feet of an intersection. So you can see an example on Moonvar and Windsor, and but that's the only one that I know that the city has done. But that's what daylighting is. That's what it's called. I don't know why.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know in the past we've kind of done that on an as-needed basis. We have, a ton of curb ramps and crosswalks, and I don't know our current stance on that. I know I don't think our public works team has the capacity to paint every single curb that leads into a crosswalk or that doesn't lead into a crosswalk. I don't think they have the capacity and resource to do that at every single curb ramp. I believe Abe might have been in a meeting with our public works director, and they might have come up with a solution and maybe with the sheriffs too, on how to go about implementing that. Because, yeah, I'm not too sure. I know it's easy for us to just say, oh, it's now a law, it's enforceable. But I do understand resident concerns that, red curb makes it more obvious, and when that's there, people won't park. And if it's not there, even if people know the law, they might end up still parking there, and it becomes annoying. You have to call the sheriffs every time. So I get that. We're trying to find a solution to that. And once you told me what daylighting was, I'm like, okay, I did read about that. So yeah, that's something we're looking into. But from my recent talks with our public works team, I don't know if we have the capacity to paint all of them red. I think a lot of residents would like that because it makes it more obvious, but I don't know if we can do that. So I can make a note to follow up with maybe what Abe and the public works team decided, and maybe the sheriffs are involved too, and then we can get back to you on that.
So I'm not expecting you to paint all the intersections, just a few where there are high pedestrian traffic, such as the one on Windsor, because there's a lot of students on that road. So maybe start with ones near schools, for instance, but certainly not all the intersections. That's a lot. Thank you.
Additional comments? No? I just had a question. So for these 4 intersections that we're talking about doing improvements with the bulb outs and whatnot, will there be an opportunity to paint the curb red at that time? So, could it be something that was gradually implemented as you do, improvements on the street?
Yeah, I think this could give us the opportunity to do that. So once I talk with Abe and our team in Public Works, and we have some kind of internal policy on how we want to go about that, if we do create something like what Jim said about maybe we just target the curbs and the ramps and the bulb outs near schools. Maybe that's something we look into. But yes, something like this, once it's constructed, it's really easy to have the contractor paint them red. So something, once we finalize how we want to proceed with this, the new daylighting law and kind of what capacity that our team has, I think, we can definitely look into it.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, so could I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve. Okay.
Okay, very good. Any additional discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so next is the traffic engineers report. So we have our list of projects. Ian, do you want to say anything about those?
I don't, what, does Abe usually go over each one of these? I can do my best. Some of these I'm not too familiar with. I don't know if you've read all these before and have some questions, I can kind of help answer. But I guess really quick, from my limited knowledge on some of these projects, the HSIP 4 traffic signal mods, I believe that's probably going to be wrapping up towards the end of this year. I think they're doing some curb ramp work, and I think there's a schedule in place to implement that signal timing very soon along Bulkin and Leucadia at that intersection. That's kind of a complicated one, so we had to schedule multiple parties to be involved and on site at that time when it gets implemented. But that's going along nicely, and I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure by the end of this year we could probably wrap that up. The leading pedestrian interval citywide project, I believe we've finalized the bid package, and it might be out to bid right now. And it looks like it gives an update construction to begin December, January. So, yeah, I think we're out to bid on that one. Bike emergency, you've probably seen some things around. We just started doing curb ramp work at Village Park and Willow Spring intersection. So while school's out, we got our contractor out there today, tomorrow, and Wednesday to knock out all 4 curb ramps at each one of the corners. Right now, we noticed low vehicle activity, and since school's out, we don't have kids running around, or as many kids running around, so we figured now is that time to get those curb ramps done since they're located very close to a school. And we hope in the next couple weeks to also do that roundabout at Quail and Eckie Ranch, which is that project at the bottom there called Traffic Calming on Quail Gardens Drive. We kind of lumped those 2 projects together, but we're moving along. So I think that project and the bike emergency project, it's scheduled to be completed in January, and we can always provide updates as they come. I'm not too familiar with the permit parking program update. It looks like it's going to be presented to City Council next year, early next year. And then it looks like everything below what I just talked about is on the completed section. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about the ongoing projects.
Commissioner Long?
Thank you, Chair. Ian, so I do have a question on the LPI. So that was on the November 13th council agenda, as noted in the notes. It was a consent item. So LPI was the main item, but it had 2, I think they're called additional alternates. And one was the painting of symbols to indicate to cyclists where the detection loop is to change the signal. And the other one was for, I think they're for ADA ramps at intersections as well. Do you know, I didn't know, I couldn't find an explanation of what additional alternate means, whether that means they will be done, they may be done, they'll be done if they have extra money, or what? Can you,
Yeah. So when you go out to bid, if you have additive alternatives, you have a base bid, which is the I guess the base project scope, and if you want to add potential items to that base bid, like if maybe the original scope didn't have ADA curb ramps, but you want to maybe throw those in there as an additive alternative, you can do so. And when you go out to bid, the contractors all bid on the base bid, and then they submit a bid and pricing for each of your additive alternatives. So for the LPI project, they're going to submit their bid for the base bid, which is probably the signal improvements and everything else that was a core part of that project. And then they're also going to bid on additive alts like the bike legends and the ramps. And depending on how the bids come back and the pricing, if it's low enough and it's something that we have the funds to pay for, then we can include one of those additive alternatives like the ramps or the legends into that project. But if we might not be able to find the funding, then we just typically have to go with the base bid. So if what you're saying is those ramps and the thermo legends are additive alts, it means that we might not be able to squeeze those into the project. It just depends on how the bids come back.
I believe the item had the bids from 5 contractors included, and the lowest one was what the council approved, well, on consent calendar, and they approved the consent calendar. So does that mean that it was approved with the additive alternatives, or I just don't understand, sorry.
Yeah, honestly, maybe it's further along than I thought. I'd have to double check. I think I spoke with one of our engineers, and it kind of sounded like the bike legends that you brought up, I think maybe last month or a couple months ago, about adding the bike legends in the left turn lane pockets. That might have actually made it into that base bid, so that might be actually part of the project scope. I'd have to double check. I do have a comment about that though, just something to share, and maybe it's something that I can work with you on offsite or meet some people. I was not aware of that being in there, and we did get a request from a resident saying that they were on their bike and they were in a left turn pocket and the signal was not picking them up. And it was at a location where we have already increased the sensitivity of the traffic loop, which is just that loop on the ground. And for a bike to be recognized and to activate that phase for them to go, they have to be somewhat on the loop. And I went out to this intersection today, and I couldn't get it to work. So I spoke with the engineer today about that and including that in this scope. And I told them before we spend the time and money implementing something like that, we should probably test it and make sure it actually works. So I'm going to try to find some time either this week or next week to go to a few different locations with a bike. Anyone's more than welcome to join me. And we want to test it and make sure that at the highest sensitivity that those loops are at, that this can actually work. Because I know the MUTCD had that legend in there. I've seen stuff online that says it can, and I think it's a good idea. But we don't want to implement it and find out that we get calls because bikes are finding it's not working. So I'm going to probably schedule some time to go out and do some testing and make sure that we figure out what works and what doesn't. So when we install those legends, maybe they're in the right spot, or maybe we do something with the loops to make it happen. But that was just a side note I wanted to add.
Okay, that sounds a good plan, but I do have a comment that often the loops are not visible because the road has been resurfaced. So then even if you know where the proper place to put your bike in relation to the loop is, if you don't know where the loop is, then you can't do it. And the sensitivity matters by inches because bikes are not very big. There's also sensitive to wheel size. So I think, like modern e-bikes, they have smaller wheels, and they may not be quite as detectable as a regular size bike. So that is the other part about painting the bikes the most, is that they should be tested, as you mentioned. Otherwise, it'd be deceptive to put the symbol there and it doesn't work. I also comment that the mayor also was someone who complained at the October 9th meeting where they discussed our work plan, that he finds it really frustrating to not be able to change the signal with his bike. So maybe that's not the resident you're talking about, but even the mayor is concerned about it.
Yeah, it's something we're looking into. And yes, there are a lot of roads where the loops aren't visible. So if we were to install something like this, we'd probably have the contractor use their little tool to identify where the loop is at the limit line, mark it out, and then we can test it that way. And then if we, put the pavement legend down in that left turn pocket, if the loop is marked out, then we're able to more accurately put that legend, which I believe is on like the right side of the loop, put that in the correct spot. But yeah, actually where I went to today, the loop was not visible. So I spent, 5 or 10 minutes kind of playing around in the lane, in the middle and the right side, and kept inching over. But I wasn't able to, but maybe I just wasn't on the loop, and maybe I need to have someone go mark it out for me. So when I go out next week, I'll probably just try to focus on locations where I can see the loop.
Yes.
And that might be easier for testing purposes, but I think it's a good idea. I think it was a good suggestion, and it sounded like it was in that base bid. So I'll double check, and we'll try to see if we can make it work.
Well, it was the additive alternative, so I don't know whether that means it wasn't
Yeah,
basic, but
I'll double check. I honestly thought it was out to bid, but I think my brain's a couple weeks back. Maybe we already did award it. But from a conversation I had today or yesterday, it kind of sounded like that was a part of the project now. So I'll double check and confirm. But regardless, even if we don't, put it as part of this project, maybe it's something that we can include on, a separate striping project that we can implement. But I'll check.
yeah, it was unclear exactly what the council approved because it was just in consent calendar. And I said, well, okay, the consent calendar, but that's why I was asking. It doesn't include the alternatives, and hopefully you can find out. Maybe you can ask Abe to clarify that at our next meeting. So,
Yeah, for sure.
okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Commissioner Thiele?
Thank you, yeah. Ian, I just have a question. It's not one of these projects that we have up on the table, but it's the Santa Fe project on Santa Fe. And I know there's been a couple of delays, and I happened to be driving there over the weekend. I saw some people working on, I don't know exactly what they were working on, but in your estimation, is it moving forward? I know there's some materials. Abe said you were waiting on materials. Is it what's the update on that road?
Yeah, I'm not too involved with that. I do know that the traffic signal materials have a long lead time, and we made some design modifications kind of late in the game, and it meant that we weren't able to purchase those traffic signal equipment things, months and months ago, like maybe, optimally we could have. So as far as I know, I believe this week they might be laying out some striping on the road. I was told that I would be needed to kind of check and inspect that. Some of the civil work, I don't really know what the status is. I'm not too involved with that project, but we do have some existing signal poles that we can kind of reuse. We have some that are sitting in our storage area and some that we might be relocating, and we can use those, it sounds like, to, I believe, to set up the mid-block crossing that's proposed by the school. So instead of waiting, 9 to 12 months for all that equipment to arrive, I think we were able to work with our consultant to figure out how to make that work, because we have the controller, we have the signal cabinet, we have all the signal stuff, and then we can reuse old signal poles for now, just temporary. And I think we had to modify the design a bit to make it work. But we should be able to implement a lot of this project before the actual final upgraded signal poles come in. The timeline on that, I'm not sure, but I do know we have a plan and a game plan to implement those before, not having to wait 9 months for the signal stuff to arrive.
No, that's super helpful. Thanks for that update. That's good. Thanks.
Any more comments from the commissioners?
Chair, we do have one speaker on this one.
Okay.
We have Lisa Provenzano.
No.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll start it out in a positive way. The bike lanes are amazing. They are so great where you've modified them or totally made them workable. I live on Quail Gardens Drive, and the modifications that you did with the stop signs really slowed it down, because we are Quail Park, which is directly across from the Botanical Gardens. So when I went in and talked to Abe maybe a couple months ago and asked him if maybe he had second thoughts about the roundabout that he's putting right at Eckie Ranch, where they have their event every year, the Lightscape, which started November 15th and will go to January 5th. And a couple months ago, he said, oh, well, we're just waiting on the materials. We've ordered them. So I don't know what the planning process is, but things start, but they don't finish. And ahead of time, you must have an idea, or the engineers must have an idea of what the lead time of the materials are. So, I know there may not be a place to store them, but it's going to get worse and worse on Quail Gardens Drive. And that roundabout, like I think the one on Santa Fe, there's no marking on it. Like there's no bike thing. People beep at me because they think I shouldn't be on my bike on the roundabout going down Leucadia. And the signage, just signage, in Oceanside they have one. It shows a circle. I'm sure you've seen it in different places. A lot of different countries, different states. And it shows what the offshoots are so that someone's not going, oh, is this IGEA? Oh, do I get there? So that would keep the flow going. And the one on Santa Fe, I even took a picture of it. It has all these black tire marks on it because people have been, trying to get around each other. So I don't know if the planning can be different so that everything wouldn't be under construction at the same time. It's at the point where it would be nice on the website to just have a thing on there to tell the streets that there's not construction on. So we can go, because you've heard from the doctors who are trying to get down Santa Fe to the hospital. And the fire station's right down the street. So that's been a big problem, and I don't know if you foresaw that or whatever. On Quail Gardens Drive, there's 4 developments. One is still not approved by the council, and there's no parking in these developments. And there's no parking on Quail Gardens Drive, and there's no parking on Leucadia, and there's no parking on Encinitas Boulevard. And maybe if you see, like Fox Point, kind of a disaster parking. And then if you have 1.7 parking spots per unit, So before you approve any more going out, they all exit onto Quail Gardens Drive. I don't know if that's a consideration that you look at. Thanks for the extra time.
Thank you for your comments. Let's see, so we are at the Commissioner's corner. Wait a minute, which one? The Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission log. Okay, so are there any comments, or would anyone like to hear updates on any of these? I'll open it up to the commissioners. Commissioner Wong.
Yes, I do have a question about number 60, which is signal timing evaluation for bicycles. And in the past, Abe has always said, well, that's going to happen with the LPI timing. Do you know whether that's true or not?
So this is signal timing evaluation for bicycles at city intersections. I don't know. I'd have to double check. We have gotten some, I'm not sure if it's going to be part of the LPI. I know we might install some bike loops for the LPI. I'm not sure exactly if this signal time evaluation for bikes is pertaining to bikes that want to use like the left turn lane and they want that green to be.
Sorry, let me explain. So, because you weren't there when I mentioned to Abe, and it's that on wide streets such as El Camino Real, for instance, at Leucadia Boulevard crossing eastbound, it's, I think it's like 8 lanes or so, 3 lanes of traffic both ways and left turn lanes and a right turn lane, that kind of thing. So it's pretty wide, and bikes don't accelerate quite as fast as cars. So when the light turns green, say going eastbound, it often starts turning yellow and red before a bike has time to get across. And that's why it's saying that it's bike timing for bikes.
Yeah, we have gotten that comment and concern from other residents. So I looked into this, and it would probably involve changing the minimum green time for some of these movements. The latest request we got was at El Camino and Leucadia, southbound left turn to go eastbound onto Olivenhain. The concern was that as a biker, once it turns, it's green, but then if it's minimum green, which is 7 seconds, you're only, by the time you get on your bike and start pedaling, it's probably been about 4 seconds. So if the minimum green is 7, as you're in the middle of the intersection, you're probably gonna look up and see it's yellow and then red. And then by the time the green goes in the other direction, you might still be in the intersection. So if that's what this sounds like it is, I did take a look at the minimum green times citywide, and I think what we're gonna have to do is take a look to see if we can increase the minimum greens to allow, I think it was like 15 feet per second is what was called out for to assume the speed of a bike. We might have to lower that a bit because, you're at a stopping position and then you get on your bike and go. So that's something we're looking into, and it would most likely involve increasing that time. Now, I'm only talking about the left turn lanes, like if you're a bike in the left turn. I assume the same might be the case for through movements too, because Leucadia and El Camino, that's a big intersection, and if the minimum green, happened, it would probably be the same thing. You'd be riding adjacent to the crosswalk, and you might not make it all the way across. So how we approach that, if we want to change, because if we do that, it does take away time from other movements. So we can't just, give a bunch of extra green time, because it takes away from from other movements that might need it. So I'm going to have to work with our team to figure out how we want to tackle that. You know, do we just tackle certain locations with high bikes? Do we do a citywide? Do I talk to Matthew, who's managing the LPI project, and see if they can throw this in there, and maybe see if we can just quick change the green time, because it's just crunching a few extra numbers. Something we can look at. And yes, it is on my to-do list, and I can write that down and see if maybe we can squeeze this into that LPI project.
Okay, bear in mind, it's only a few intersections with really wide roads, like ECR, that's probably 100 feet wide there, 8 lanes or whatever, so it takes a while even at 15, if you're rolling at 15 feet per second, that's 10 miles an hour. But if you're starting from a stop, it takes longer.
Yeah, and we can target the larger intersections for sure if that's how we want to proceed with that. But yeah, that specific location was on my to-do list, and again, I'll work with our team to see if we can create some kind of game plan for that. But yeah, that sounds good. It's on my to-do list, and we'll probably update you. I assume before the next commission meeting, because I don't think we have one in December or January. So we'll try to send updates on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Commissioner
Thank
Stevie?
you. Thank you. Ian, I just have a question. I was riding northbound on the Coast Highway, and I don't know how far along I was, but I was pretty far north heading into La Costa Avenue, and I had to shift over, it's one lane each way. And I was wondering what the status is on the build out for that portion of road, just La Costa South to Leucadia. Well, I know you have it down to Leucadia Boulevard, a certain section, but then the north section is still under construction. Do you have an estimate on that one?
Yeah, so I tried to talk with our streetscape project manager today, because I wanted to get as much info as possible for everyone here today. I did not get a chance to talk, so I don't know what the status is. I do know it's a large-scale project, so it could be some time, but I'm not sure. So that's something I can make note of, and I can try to get back to you on that once I have an answer.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Then moving to development projects updates. Ian, are there any comments that you want to bring up regarding these projects?
Is this it right here?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oof. Yeah, I'm not the development project guy here, so I don't know anything about this Andrew Avenue project. Yeah, I don't think I could give any accurate. We have a traffic engineer that works with us that deals a lot with development projects. Unfortunately, that's not me, so I couldn't give you any, but once I see him, I can draft a summary and I can send it to everyone.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's see, any of the commissioners have any additional comments on the development projects? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to Commissioner Corner. Amanda, do we have anything in our packet for the Commissioner's Corner? Nope, okay. Okay, any new projects anyone wants to bring up or new issues?
Well, an issue here, I think it's a planning commission issue rather than a mobility commission issue. However, there's parking overflow from the Quail Gardens Encinitas Boulevard, Lucadia Boulevard project, what's it called? Fox Point, yes. The traffic overflow from that was a surprise because it seems like the Planning Commission carefully evaluated the parking requirements and covered that. I'm thinking that the roadhouse there is drawing much more traffic than they'd expected. And this is a matter that perhaps it brought to the attention of the Planning Commission. Perhaps the developer should not be given an occupancy permit on those houses until this parking issue is solved.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments on the development projects? Okay, well,